We're moving into a new section now, and on the whole, we're going to be looking at improving the sonics of our files. And when I'm talking about the sonics, clearly I'm talking about the audio. I want to show you different ways that we can improve our audio, not just with an overall master file that we've been using, but also the individual files that make up that particular song. A little bit later on, I'm going to do a remix of the song, so it would be worthwhile having all the original elements, i.e. the vocal track or the guitar track, etc., as individual files, so that I can remix it here within Vegas. Now, on the whole, that's what I'm going to be doing, but additionally, I'm going to look at how we can link Vegas Pro 12 with another program, an audio editing program. Now, with Vegas Pro being made by Sony, perhaps the best program to run in parallel with Vegas is Sony's SoundForge. However, as far as I know, there isn't a course on SoundForge on VTC's website, and therefore, just in case you get stuck with some of the terms or some of the functions that I utilize, I'm going to use other programs to run in parallel with Vegas Pro that you can find courses on VTC's website. I.e., I'm going to run in parallel Adobe's Audition CS6, and at times I might use Steinberg's Wavelab 7 as well. Anyway, let's look at where we've got up to so far. Here are those photographs that we looked at in the previous tutorial at the end of the last section, with the main studio recording. Well, as it happens, I don't need these for this tutorial, or indeed for the next one as well, so I'll select them and remove them simply by hitting the delete key on my keyboard, and I'll also remove the audio there, because what I want to do is bring in a different photograph, and I really want to bring in 4 separate photographs of the individual members of the band, so that I can create a small section with the photograph with details about that particular member of the band, and whilst the viewer is looking at the biographical details of that member of the band, I want to have a part of the song that that particular member played, but in isolation. So, for example, if I go down here to this photograph, of course this is the singer in the band. I know that not just by clicking on the preview there, I know that because I can see him singing. Well, that's the photograph I'm going to use, so I'll left click and drag it down onto my timeline, and I'll just zoom in a little bit. Okay, now we're experiencing the same problem as we saw at the end of the last tutorial, whereby the photograph is the wrong aspect. Well, we know how to correct this now, don't we? By clicking on this crop button down here, that opens up our Video Event Effects interface. And we also know what we do. We right click and then run down to Match Output Aspect. And once I close this down, well, of course, there's our singer, Zach. And as I say, what I'd like to be able to do is put some textual details on top of this photograph. We're not going to do it yet. We'll do that in a later section. What I want to do in this section, and in this tutorial, and in the coming up tutorials, is look at how we import and use and sonically optimize a relevant audio file, i.e. Zach singing in isolation, as opposed to the main track itself. So if I come back over here and click on the audio bin, well, you can see, well, you could probably guess anyway, that the vocal file that I want to use is that one there called vocal dry es.wav. So that's an audio WAV file, and that's the audio file that I want to use to play whilst this photograph is on screen with Zach's biographical details. Well, when I say it's this vocal file, it's not exactly this file. What I've done is I've created a copy with the same name for this vocal file that I've placed in a different place on my hard drive. And I've done that because I want to show you a particular function that you can use. As you can see, I've got this vocal file here in my project media panel. It's part of my project at the moment. However, I want to replace it with a different version of it. Now, we're doing it with pretty much an exact copy. However, you might want to replace an audio file. Maybe you're using a soundtrack with some rain as an audio file, but you want to substitute that or replace that rain audio file with one of the Sound of Summer, for example. Well, I'm going to show you the technique or the function that allows us to do this. If you right-click on the file, then you can run down here to where it says Replace. Well, click on there, and then now you can navigate to the particular audio file that you want to use as the replacement. So let me navigate through these particular folders, digging out the relevant file. And it's there, Vocal Dry ES. Now, it's only by coincidence got the same name. It's more than likely that you will be searching for a different file that you want to use to replace, and it will have a different name. Okay, so that's a file that I want. So all I need to do is click on Open. And because I want to check this out, to make sure I have got the right file, by having it selected here, as we've seen before, by clicking on our preview button up here, well, this allows us to hear it. Okay, let's check it out.
White Star rocket ships fill the air. with the roar of drums and the sound of I don't care. I can just imagine what's going on in there, but I cannot fathom as we dance along the air. And I believe.
Okay, definitely the one. There is Zach in full pelt singing his heart out. And in isolation, i.e. we don't get the backing track as well. And therefore, because I now know that this is the audio track I want, all I need to do is left click on it and drag it down onto my timeline. Okay, simple enough. Now I'll just zoom out, and because this audio file does stretch a fair amount of time, then I want to enlarge my photograph. All I need to do is trim extend. Is that a correct term, trim extend? Well, I'm using it anyway. I'm going to trim extend this photograph by left clicking on the end there and dragging out towards the right so that it lines up with the end of our newly imported audio file. Okay, now to get a flavour of what this is going to look like and sound like, I'll just move my CTI to here. We don't really need to hear it all. And I'll click play.
White Star rocket ships fill the air with the roar of drums.
Okay, sorted. That's all we need to do. As I say, a little bit later on, and as part of my eventual movie, I want a biographical detailed area of the members of the band, and I can use this photograph. Well, perhaps I'll use a couple of different photographs, fading in and out, transitioning between the 2 or 3 of them, with the biographical details for Zach, combined with the audio file of him singing in isolation. Right, I'm going to finish up for this tutorial, and we'll work through in the next tutorial how we can sonically improve the audio file that we've now placed on our track 2 there. Okay, see you in a moment.